and welcome back to another Dyanna Eisel. How's it going, Dyanna?
Hi, how are you?
It's been a minute since we have talked about a post in the MOMnation group.
It has been a minute for sure. Life and plagues and germs and things like just throw us off our game.
All the things that moms have to deal with, right?
Yes, absolutely. We just keep on trucking, don't we?
That's right. And here we are. And today I saw this post. Oh, when did it come out? I think the beginning of the month. And it caught my eye because I've been seeing posts that are really similar lately.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to, obviously, I'm bringing it to you so that we can chat about it. But I wanted to go deep into this and get your take on it. And it has to do with couples, with married couples and their finances. So, like some couples share finances and pay bills out of, one account, for instance, pool all their money together. Some separate that, some do a combination of the two. And gotta love social media. I mean, I love it for so many things, but sometimes some comments back to people, I just kind of cringe a little bit, specifically with the topic of finances and sharing finances. Personally, and I'll read the post here in just a second, but personally, I feel like it's kind of up to the individual couple what they feel is appropriate and what they feel, how they wish to move forward. I don't think there's any sort of rule book out there that says a married couple is not a real married couple until they pool their finances.
Absolutely.
And I see comments out that are kind of cringe, and I'm like, well, gee, I respect everybody's, stance and how they feel about things, but I also respect and understand that other people do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It's subjective, just like a lot of other things. Like every couple is different. All at the end of the day, as long as they decide and they're good with whatever arrangement they have, that's really all that matters. It's not really up for like interpretation by anyone else. It doesn't stop anyone from giving their opinion, right? But
right.
It's like you could apply that to anything. Like, oh, this couple like only has sex like once a week. Are they cool with it? Are they good with it? Cool. Then cool that you also have sex 5 times a week. Like that's great for you guys. But like it doesn't really matter as long as the couple like both agree and they're clear with what their expectations are and they're both good with it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times when we see some of those comments that feel a little like, judgy or maybe critical in some ways, like, it's really hard to reframe this sometimes when you're the one that like writes the post, but like, I feel like that says a lot more about the person that's saying that than it does about who they're trying to judge or who they're trying to criticize, right? Like that makes me feel like, something else is like being like triggered here or poked at that doesn't feel very nice. And it's being used, that post is being used as an attempt to sort of like project that out a little bit. So, there's plenty of keyboard warriors out there. There's also plenty of helpers out there that are trying to just like give their 2 cents. Whatever it is, like at the end of the day, we're all just humans doing our best. And if you don't like the feedback that you're getting, it really doesn't have anything to do with you. It really has more to do with whatever that person is experiencing or interpreting at the end of the day.
I love that advice. And that's so important to keep in mind as we're on social media and as we're posting vulnerable things, right? Because it can hurt.
Totally. Absolutely.
And even from strangers.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I felt for a few of these, they were, in the moms group. So they were ladies, I think. But I felt for a few of these ladies, like, man, you kind of just poured your heart out. You're looking for some feedback and somebody's telling you you're not a real married couple because you don't share your finances. And then I started to wonder, where does that come from? And I thought, well, there was a point in time when it was one spouse was home and one worked, right? Like that was common.
Right. So, and it wasn't just one parent. It was the man, typically, like in our society, in our culture, that was the breadwinner, that was the financial provider. And then the wife stayed home and was a stay-at-home parent and did, the domestic type duties and like raising the kids and like all of that stuff. And that really wasn't that long ago when you look at like the grand scheme of like history here. That wasn't that long ago, but we have come so far. So many of those antiquated ideas are only one generation removed from us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So our generation was raised by a generation where that was like still a thing. You know what I mean? So much of our influences naturally are going to come from how we were raised too.
Right. But it was a thing because it had to be a thing, because the spouse that didn't work wasn't pulling in any finances. So what were they going to do? Not have anything? You know what I mean? So they couldn't contribute 50-50 to the bills, so to speak. And as we started to move further into the future, that changed. And I rarely feel like I run into a two-person household, or, two parents that are together that don't work at some level. Like maybe someone does stay home with the kids, but there's like a part-time gig or kind of something that they do as well. I feel like that's really common.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not going to be 50-50 when you're splitting the bills, just like with anything else. You know what I mean? Like if one person is, independently employed, owns their own business, they may not have health insurance, but their partner who works for a company might carry the health insurance. So is it 50-50 when they're spending $500, a month or a paycheck on insurance premiums? You know what I mean? That's often not taken into consideration. I think about something that you said, like right at the beginning of this, which is like, I'm seeing a lot more of this lately. And I agree. And I think it's because of, where inflation is right now. So I think more people are feeling it right now. And anytime something becomes more magnified, it just kind of brings out some things that were maybe a little bit more latent before that we weren't really thinking about. But now that more people are feeling it, really feeling it, you know what I mean? Then they're reflecting and like, oh, like this doesn't feel equal, or I have less at the end of my pay period than I normally do because, Cheerios are $7 a box right now. You know what I mean? So I do think it is timing with the economy when some of these issues come up. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be discussed when, finances are fine and the economy is fine, whatever that means, you know what I mean? But those things do tend to pop up more when people are feeling it the most.
That is such a great point. And this is why I love talking to you. One of the reasons I love talking to you. That didn't even occur to me. And I know gas is up 50% in the last couple of years. I know mortgage rates are up, from 2.75 to whatever, up 5% from that now. I know that the cost of eggs has tripled. Like I know. And thank you for putting that into perspective, because that really makes sense. I know that people are struggling out there. Absolutely everyone that I talk to, everyone that I know is.
Absolutely.
So makes sense that this is a thing. And with that, are you seeing, and again, I know I need to read the post, I will, but are you seeing, with the economy the way that it is, are you seeing more stress with your clients toward finances that is impacting marriages at this point?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially with, the job market has definitely had some swings this year. So some people are getting laid off. Some people are having to take lower paying jobs as in an effort to just continue to contribute financially. How to spend money, which goes back to the meanings of money, right? It's really hard to change your spending habits when you no longer have as much as you once had, you know what I mean? When insurance is up with like 30% in Arizona this year.
Yes, so it is.
When you had, let's just say, $100 at the end of your pay period, and now it's like $50 at the end of your pay period. You know what I mean? Like you're definitely going to feel that, and you're going to feel it on a different level if two partners like have different income levels, have jobs that make like more or less. You're definitely going to feel more of that disparity during that time. But this is finances, are one of the top 3 reasons that couples have conflict, right? And sometimes they aren't a thing until it's a thing. You know what I mean? Like we're both doing really well, everything's fine, and then something happens, someone unfortunately loses a job or has their hours cut or something like that, and now it's a thing. Now it's, oh, you go to Starbucks 3 times a week to get $7 coffees. Man, I've been doing that for 5 years. Like,
Yeah.
it's just now that you're noticing because like hours got cut and we're having to trim here and there. You know what I mean? So things that weren't necessarily a huge conflict before, now we've got this like top 3 item on the table that has to be contended with too. So I'm definitely seeing more of that as well.
Yeah, there's definitely added stress out there. And, you know, I don't do what you do, but I do work with married couples with what I do. And I am seeing couples that have depleted their life savings.
Yeah.
Their credit card bills are higher, or, you know, balances are higher than they've maybe ever been.
Right. Emptying out 401ks in order to, you know, make down payments or afford things, and looking at their own mortgage payments and like, you know, seeing people that feel stuck, you know, that like, I got this house at, you know, a 2.5%. And now if I sell and buy something else, it's like more than triple that, you know, at this point. And so it does lead to a lot of conflict and a lot of feeling stuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So the post,
So
now that we're like, you know, 12 minutes into the show, it's cool. When you and your, so here's the post that was posted on August 1st in the MOMnation Arizona group. When you and your spouse say bills should be 50-50, are you splitting the bill in half or based on what you make? Ooh, good question. My spouse makes 6 figures and I make $30,000. I run out way faster than my spouse and feel like a dog with my tail between my legs when asking for gas money or money for necessities in between paydays. He gets annoyed with me.
Okay, first thought is this, I think, has very little to do with money at this point. I think there is definitely some different power dynamics that are happening in the relationship that were occurring before this became a thing. I mean, I don't know many mathematicians. I'm certainly not one myself, but if you make 30,000 a year, like how long have you been making 30,000 a year? Probably a while, and your husband's probably aware of what your pay is, and that $30,000 isn't going to get you very far in the grand scheme of things. So I kind of wonder, like, what were the conversations to begin with when you took the job for 30,000, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of industries, tutors, that don't get paid enough to do what they do, but they do it. People do it because they love it and they want to make a difference. And I like admire the hell out of that. But like, how long have you been doing that job? Like, was there a pay decrease? Like, was there like, what was the conversation before when he was making 6 figures and you're making 30 grand? Was he always making 6 figures? Like, how long has that been happening? Is that like a recent development? Like, was there a recalibration conversation when either one of their salaries changed to be like, okay, so like we have to look at things a little bit differently now, because clearly $30,000 is not going to get me as much in terms of bills as your 6-figure salary. You know what I mean? So like, can we talk about that? And so I sense that in addition to it being like about how to recalibrate the spending and the money, again, it feels like there's something else going on there, because what is he getting mad about? Is he getting mad about, you know, hey, I need an extra $50 to fill my gas tank this week? Or is he hearing like, I never have any money, you have all the money, you get to buy all these fun things? None of that's in the post, you know what I mean? But like,
we don't know.
Is he hearing? Is he hearing like he's being like controlled for the way that he spends the money? Is he feeling like he's, you know, contributing more than he feels like he should? I don't know. I don't know like what his impression or perspective of things are, but I suspect that this isn't just about money. And how long has this been going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm confused with the question a little bit. When you and your spouse say bills should be 50-50, are you splitting the bill in half or based on what you make? So I'm wondering, what is she doing? Is she splitting it in half, or and then trying to argue the fact of, hey, like I can't match you,
right
kind of thing, you know? Yeah. So I'm a little bit confused about that. There's definitely some information I would love to have, as I'm sure you would too, to, you know, to bring this a little bit deeper. Yeah. And I love what you said about, you know, what's the presentation to him? Is it like, hey, I have been driving the kids to all the sports. I do drop off, I do pick up, and my gas is, you know, my tank's empty. I need some help with this, so that she can continue to carry out her end of the bargain. Right. Or is she spending on things that necessarily aren't needed,
or that he doesn't agree with,
or that he doesn't agree with? Exactly. And then maybe that's why he's annoyed potentially. I mean, I understand there's probably some other underlying things like you mentioned, but I mean, that would annoy me if somebody, you know, spent all their money on stupid stuff, let's say, and then came, I'm not saying she is, but let's just say, you know, that's the case. And then came to me and was like, sorry, I'm out. I need it now for necessities. I would feel like that's a bit irresponsible.
Totally. And that's why it is so valuable to consider like who the bad guy is in this situation, right? Like, is he the bad guy, or is there something here that's not being understood properly? You know what I mean? Like, is it that, I'm not saying she is, but, you know, going to Starbucks 5 times a week and, you know, spending $50 a week on coffee and now you can't fill your gas tank. Well, like, okay, well, like priorities, you know what I mean? But like, if he's seeing the way that money is spent is the same as the way she sees money spent, which is rarely the case, right? What we know about meetings of money, and you know, and she's still coming up short at the end of the month, well, then that's like oh, hey, well, that makes sense. So like, it sounds like I need to take over that bill. Like I need to take over the electric or whatever, so that you have that cushion at the end of the month to get gas and, you know, pay for, you know, sports and like do whatever needs to be done. Which then leads me to the question of like, who's in charge of the finances? So is she in charge of the finances and paying the bills like out of her account, and she asks him for the money and he cuts her a check or transfers money or whatever? Is he aware of how money is being spent and where it's going? Maybe he's under an impression that like he doesn't know all of the places that money are going. You know what I mean? And that's a really common conflict with couples when there tends to be like a default parent, right? Which I'm not going to say it's always moms, but a lot of times it's moms, right? You know, buying the school supplies and stuff like that. Like when I told my husband how much I spent on school supplies, he's like, are you insane? And I'm like, no, like that's how much school supplies cost.
Yeah. You know, and you probably dialed back from
like
previous years.
And it's like, I can't control how much those things cost, but maybe he doesn't know some of the things that like she's spending money on are going up. Like, you know, if he's not visible, if he doesn't have visibility to the electric bill, does he see that it's summertime and like the bills are like $300, $400, $500? Like, does he see and how much insurance has gone up? Who's running the finances? Like, who is paying the bills? And if one of them doesn't have visibility, I would highly suggest they both sit down and look through everything. These are all the bills. This is how much they are. This is how much I make. This is how much I'm contributing. This is how much you're contributing. I think we need to recalibrate here. So now you understand where all this money is going. This isn't just me asking you for money because you think that I'm being frivolous or spending it improperly, but like, this is the brass tacks right here. This is what's coming out of my account. And this is why I'm asking. You know what I mean? And then that solves the whole dilemma of her feeling like she has to put her tail between her legs and ask for money, because like now we know how much money is actually coming out and need an extra $500 a month or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's out in the open. I can see how if one spouse is handling all of the finances, paying all the bills, you know, all of that, I can see how that can be a little uncomfortable for the other spouse that maybe feels a bit in the dark, and not saying that that's the fault of the spouse that, you know, handles this stuff. Somebody's got to handle it. And I'm not saying that the person that's in the dark is totally not responsible for that either, right? Like, ask questions if you have questions. But I can see how that can make somebody feel uneasy and potentially come off as annoyed or short or something like that, because it's kind of the unknown, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what is 50-50? You know, you guys have to decide what 50-50 is. Maybe it's splitting the amount of bills down the middle, but like he takes like the higher ones and you take the lower ones or whatever. You know what I mean? Rarely are things 50-50 in the way that we like conceptualize it. You know what I mean? It's not always going to be 100% like 50-50. If she's making $30,000 a year, maybe only doing like part-time, like she's probably like at home with the kids after school while he's at work. And so there's childcare expenses that are not being, you know, spent because she's home. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's like a lack of understanding of where this money is going. And so I would suggest that they sit down and look through everything. And if at that point she's still feeling like, yes, he sees it all in black and white, no, I still don't have enough money at the end of the month, then like that's kind of a different conversation. Like, what is this actually about then? If you're feeling, resistant or uncomfortable to contributing more financially based on the disparity of our salaries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. My last question for you on this topic is just out of curiosity. Do you find with your couples that come in to see you when you start talking finances, do you find that most couples do designate one spouse to handle all of the bill paying and all of that? Or do you usually see like a combination? What's common?
I see both, but I do see a lot of one partner kind of just like overtaking like everything. And some of them have spreadsheets and they're like super organized, all of that stuff. Sometimes it happens organically for people who've been together for a long time, where I have like, I have my credit card payments and my cell phone and my car and all this. And then you have your stuff over here. And then sometimes over time, as salaries change, then it's like, hold on a second, like I'm really struggling here because I can't keep up anymore, but you're doing much better than I am financially. So like it kind of just happened like that, but now we have to come back together and figure out something different. You know what I mean? It's an uncomfortable conversation. Money's always an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, and probably depending on where you're at in your relationship too, obviously, like we've talked about before on previous episodes, it's important to have these hard conversations up front, before the honeymoon's over. But sometimes it doesn't always happen.
No. And those big topics, like those big ticket items, often do come out when there's other things going on in the relationship. You know what I mean? Sometimes, couples will present with, let's say, like infidelity. Somebody had an affair, went outside the relationship. Okay, so we're focusing on, betrayal trauma and attachment injuries and trying to build trust and all that stuff. And then it's like, 3 sessions later, then they're like, oh, also, I don't have any access to the money. And I'm like, hold on a second. Like this is more than just having an affair. Like there's a lot happening here that needs to be like broken apart. But a lot of those things sort of just like lay dormant when things feel quote unquote okay, until something bigger comes up. And then it's like, oh yeah, you're also not doing that. And oh yeah, we're still doing this. You know what I mean? And then it's like, hold on a second. We can't stay on topic anymore because this is so multi-layered. You know what I mean? There's so much more going on than just this one thing that you thought you were coming to counseling for. So a lot of those big ticket items do come out when there's been another like situation or another conflict that's come up.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Okay, one more question. I lied before. So is there, and there may not be an answer to this, and I understand that, but is there a combination, or maybe combination not the right word, is there a way that you have seen couples handle this situation with the most success? Like just the whole topic of money, not necessarily the 50-50 bills thing.
Transparency. And that requires being very vulnerable. You know what I mean? We all have some sort of hang up with money. Everybody does. Does. You know what I mean? But if you can be really comfortable and vulnerable with your partner to be transparent and like, hey, okay, so here's the budget. Here's all of our bills. I really do like to go to Starbucks a couple of days a week. And like, if I have to give that up, then I will. But like, that's kind of like something that I like to do. You know what I mean? Okay, like, I don't agree with that. I would rather you put that into our retirement fund. But obviously, money means something different to you than it does to me. How can we renegotiate this? Can you go like twice a week instead of 3 times a week or something like that? You know what I mean? But like, don't allow it to become a problem after it's already a problem. You know what I mean? Just be really transparent about, what are my expectations? I only make $30,000 a year. You're making 6 figures. So we need to figure out how to best split this based on what we spend. I can tell you I spend, this many, this $100 on, getting my nails done or my hair done every month. Like I consider that self-care. I really don't want to have to give that up. You know what I mean? But like this is what I spend my money on. I'm not holding back. This is what I spend my money on. Okay, this is what I spend my money on. Okay, well, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money, but we need to come together and somehow calibrate what that looks like differently so that both of our needs are getting met. How do you know you've got a good compromise? When both people feel like they lost a little bit. You know what I mean?
It's true.
How do you know you have a good compromise? So transparency is like if you are the partner that handles the finances and the other partner doesn't, sit them down and be like, listen, like, I just want you to see what this looks like. I want you to see this spreadsheet. I want you to see what went out last month. I want you to see what's coming in last month. Like, tell me what you see. Like, tell me how you feel about it. You know what I mean? And if he's looking at everything in this case, in this post, and he's looking at everything and he's like, oh, like, you're in the negative $100 after that stuff comes out. And she's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I'm coming to you, like, asking for money for gas and stuff, because like, this is what's happening. And now that you're aware that it's happening, like, great, like, let's just figure this out so we can come to a better solution. You know what I mean? The more you know, the more you guys can communicate and find a solution to some of these things. And that's across the board. The less transparent, the less vulnerable you are with everything is only going to lead to problems. Financial struggles, affairs, you know what I mean? Because an expectation of lack of intimacy, you're not being vulnerable, you're not being transparent about needs not being met. You know what I mean? Feelings about like parenting, like different parenting styles. Like, are we talking about that? Or are we just kind of sitting idly by? We see our partner do something that we don't like until one day it's like years later. It's like, I don't like how you do this. Well, man, I've been doing that like since our kids were little. You're telling me that now? You know what I mean? So it's across the board. The more transparent, the more vulnerable you are in your relationship, that's how you can avoid these things like down the road from being huge conflicts. You know what I mean?
I love that. And I love the little piece that you threw in there about retirement. Yeah. Because I feel like, you know, depending on how old you are, when you get into the relationship, you might not be thinking about retirement, but that all ties into this whole thing, especially if your plan is to, you know, be together through those years. That's going to come into this financial conversation as well. What does that look like? How does that change things?
Absolutely. If she's making 30,000, I don't know what her situation is, but how much is she able to contribute to that? And how much is he contributing to that? What are his goals with that retirement money? You know, how is he planning on, like, is that, you know, joint money for both of them to retire at some point? Does he have his own trajectory of when he's going to retire? You know what I mean? Like, with retirement and like, you know, inflation, the economy the way that it is, this isn't the first time we've seen this, but like, there's a lot of insecurity about, you know, Gen X and millennials like getting older and like what retirement looks like, because like the funds aren't there like they were for previous generations. You know what I mean? The funds are just not there. So it's something that we didn't learn a whole lot about when we were younger. We weren't taught that. You know, I can tell you confidently, I've never used a matrix in my entire adult life, but I really could have used a class on paying taxes and interest rates and, you know, retirement funds and like stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so we were kind of kept in the dark for a long time. So to your point, really long-winded way of saying, like, the retirement piece is also really important because it does suggest longevity in the relationship. And there should be some sort of shared goal there too with the finances.
Right, right. Even if it's your retirement, my retirement.
Sure.
Right. Still, the conversation needs to be had, and what are we contributing, and who's contributing what, and what's comfortable for one another, you know?
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you said that piece again. I'll repeat myself because I don't think we think about it enough until we get to the point where we have to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I agree with you. I haven't done algebra in probably 20 years, but I sure could have used a better economics class in high school.
Could have used like how to budget and taxes, like tax rates and how to pay your taxes and deductions and like know what all that stuff means instead of, you know, taking statistics. You know, when you have a full deck but it's missing the ace of spades, what's the likelihood you're going to pull the two of clubs and the three of hearts in succession and see a purple rhinoceros across the street? Like, nobody's using that.
Yeah, exactly. We're not gambling here.
No, like, let's learn like the real life stuff that's going to help us as adults.
For sure. And that's such a rabbit hole too, because then, and I know we're like getting off topic now, but what about insurance? I mean, how confusing when you know, got out of school and you were an adult and you were on your own, like how confusing was insurance, homeowners, auto, health, rental insurance, like renters insurance, like how confusing is all that?
And like, how much should I be paying in premiums? And like, what happens if I get sick? What happens to my premiums then? You know what I mean? Insurance is a whole other beast. That's a whole other beast.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, with that, you're still doing your 15-minute consults, right?
I am. Yeah. You can go onto my website, DyannaEiselTherapy.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation to see if we're a good fit.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you again for being with us today. I appreciate you so much as always.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Of course. You're welcome. If you guys want to check out any of our previous episodes, Dyanna and I have been doing this for quite some time now. So we have got a lot of content under our belts, guys. Hop over to our YouTube channel. It is at MOMnation USA. That is the handle. Scroll down just a little ways. You will see the playlist for our love story. And there you can literally binge. Like you can binge all weekend long on Dyanna and I. You go there and check that out. If you prefer the podcast style on your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for MOMnation Talk Radio. There we are. Download, like, subscribe, all the things. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.